we have directly behind me George Reese, and George is from Sika TV. Next, we have Grant Housley from Paramount Pictures. Next, we have Nina Harrison from Viacom. And finally, I already told y'all about this guy. I already told you that everybody in South Florida, if you have anything to do with film, you need to know this guy. But I'm going to introduce him again. Please welcome Kevin Sharpley. Take it.
Okay, so this is my favorite panel, actually. But it's the first time that I've been on the diversity and inclusion panel. And I just had something whispered to me, but we got to acknowledge it. It was her idea. I'm all about giving shine. You got to give shine where the shine is due. But it is super important. It's super important, and I'm going to tell you guys a story, which is not a real story. It's not going to be long, and I'm not name dropping. There's a reason for it. So I have a friend. His name is Gregory Allen Howard. He's my writing mentor. He wrote Remember the Titans. I say everything from Remember the Titans to Harriet and a bunch of stuff in between. And so I had him over to my house for brunch. And it was a little bit after Black Panther, maybe a year after Black Panther came out. And I was like, Greg, this is incredible. Like, everybody is abuzz about this diversity, and this is going to be a whole new road. And Greg was like, look, Kevin, let me tell you something. I've seen this before. It always ebbs and flows. There'll be high 1 minute, and then it goes down low another minute, and it goes high down, up a minute, and down a minute. And I was like, oh, okay, man. But I was hurt. I was hurt, but I didn't let him know I was hurt. Because, you know, when Black Panther came out, really the whole world was abuzz about diversity. But here we are in 2020, and I'm not going to say that this was a carryover from Black Panther, but there is still that huge buzz, and there have been strides. There have been accomplishments in terms of diversity, but I can't say that it's 100%, because we can see a lot of the effect in front of us, but when you look at the upper echelons, and I'm glad to be here with Mr. Housley and my shine fellow here. When you look at the upper echelons, and they work in the upper echelons, you know, on the other side of the camera, we don't see as many strides. It's still, in terms of, you know, producers, in terms of executives, very much not as diverse. And so what makes me feel great about this panel is it is a conversation, and it opens up the conversation. I can say at the higher rungs, it's still pretty much 93%. I'm not going to mention any races, but it's 93% of a specific race.
Say it.
Okay. You're wearing a white dress. but you know, there are strides that are being made, and there are, I would say, big pieces of content that are happening. I just started watching The Underground Railroad, and I'm mentioning that because Barry Jenkins, who's from Miami, who won an Oscar for Moonlight, he has created a masterpiece with that particular project, and it's great to see that that's on air in the form that it's on. But there still are a lot of, you know, movement. There's a lot of movement that still needs to be made. So I'm going to start from my left down, my immediate left down this time, because I started the other way the other time. Because there's two areas in this. There's diversity in terms of culture, there's diversity in terms of sex. So I want to ask, how do you feel about both rungs in terms of diversity of color and diversity of sex? Do you feel like there has been strides made? Do you feel like we're accomplishing?
I think there's been strides, yes. Accomplishments, I think, is a stretch, but there's strides, and everything takes baby steps. It starts with, one series at a time, or, one film at a time. It starts with conversations with amongst important people that make decisions. It's a conversation that definitely needs to be had all the time. Because a lot of people want to be able to see themselves represented on screen, at least in this industry. And they also want to see themselves making decisions about what's being put on screen. As I mentioned in an earlier panel, I'm primarily focused in Latin America. And Latin America, everyone thinks it's just this monolith of just Latinos, that's it. But there are Latinos that are black, white, tan. I'm Cuban and I'm black. I'm mixed. I'm multicultural and I'm a woman, so I have like 3 minorities. I tick all the boxes. So just going to my point of Latin America, it's when me working in this industry and seeing what's being put in Latin America, all I see is white Latinos. And they don't even notice it. It's like, it's just, a race is not an issue really down there. It's more of a socioeconomical thing, but it is a sex thing as well. Like women, it's just viewed differently there. But we are making strides, at least now, the industry, mainly because, and I hate to say it, diversity and inclusion is becoming a trend. It's just trendy. It's trendy now, and it's not supposed to be a trend, but hey, if this is what we gotta do to make it get attention, to call it a trend, then whatever, we gotta do that. But trends come and go. This doesn't, it needs to be permanent and instilled in the industry, in the boardrooms, at the tables, at the production tables, in the writers' rooms. It needs to be everywhere. And diversity doesn't really mean, okay, we need to have an all-black cast, or we need to have an all-Latino cast, or we need to have all women, or we need to have all female, right? No, it's about representation of the world that we live in now. We live in such a diverse world that now the white straight male is really the minority in the society that we live in. It's no longer, excuse me?
I was joking, as evidence by...
Well, yeah, so it's it's crazy because, at Viacom, I'm co-chair in our employee resource groups that focus on, different backgrounds and cultures, and that's something that we realize, that now the minority is the white straight male, and they feel a little threatened now because all this wave of diversity is coming. It's like, wait a minute, don't forget about us. But it's like, no, y'all had your time. So now you got to let other people come and make decisions. And no disrespect, obviously, we still want that perspective, but now it's time to get a perspective from everyone, Asian, everywhere. I'm just throwing out, I don't want to just name all the ethnicities, but you get my point. We just need perspectives from everywhere. I want to see myself on screen. I know the young black girl wants to see herself on screen in a positive light, not in a stereotypical light. And that comes from the writers' rooms and who you have in the writers' rooms representing their culture, because that's where a lot of these stereotypes are stemmed from. What you see on television, what you see in the media, is like, who's writing these narratives? You need authentic narratives from authentic people that come from that background, from that diverse background. So that's a long-winded answer.
No, yeah, we need, but for this, we needed a long-winded answer. That was great. That was great. And what I think about, and this is a great point, you said diversity and inclusion, and oftentimes the default becomes, oh, it has to be an all-black film, or it has to be an all-Latino film. No. I just saw In the Heights yesterday, incredible movie. You all should see it. And it was pretty much all Latino, except it did have a black guy. I can't remember his name. He's an incredible actor. And it did feel, kind of nice to see that kind of. I lived in Washington Heights, so it was great to see Washington Heights. But Washington Heights in the house, or New York in the house. Okay, all right, yeah. But when you talk about diversity and inclusion, I don't think it's just asking to have an all-black cast or all Hispanic cast, or if you even look at the makeup of America, blacks are 12, 13%, Hispanics are 15, 16%, maybe 17%. So even if you look at that, and you have Asians, which are a percentage, you have Native Americans, inclusion is, hey, can we see all of these demographics represented, not just the check marks? We have one minority in the project.
And one thing I want to add too is I get a chance to see ratings like the Nielsen ratings and the demographics. The number one group of people that consume television are African Americans or minorities or Hispanics, but yet that's not reflected on TV. They're not seeing themselves on television as often, or their stories being told. So that just goes to show, when you're talking about the makeup of America, it's like, well, this is not representation of what we really are anymore.
Yeah, and that's kind of lifting behind the veil. That's great that you would give that information. So, and I know it's legally sound. But I mentioned this in the last panel. You look at a show like Lupin, which Omar Sy is definitely a minority, and the show was when that show was out. That was Netflix. That was their number one show. The second season just came out. I don't know what's happening with that. It was their number one show. So it is proven that not only can a black lead have the type of attention as anyone else, he doesn't speak. I mean, maybe he speaks. He does speak English because I saw him in X-Men. But I mean, that show was in French. So I'm going to throw it to you, Grant. You're in the hot seat.
Hot seat, yeah. So yeah, diversity and inclusion. It's come a long way, but I'm saying that in terms of a relay race. The first round was a long way, right? The first handoff has been a long way to finally hand it off. The Black Panther moment, it played worldwide, it played really big, as it should. There's a lot of things that were proven in the build of Black Panther. Black producers, black director, black writer, black stars, 90% black cast. But all those things were greenlit and made possible through Kevin Feige, who's a white guy, right? There's a discussion that is happening that we have to continue where we're not canceling out white culture
Right.
to make room for everyone else. White culture and everyone else have to come together, and white culture has to be accepting of that, right? That's the big piece of it. Just being accepting to it, to understand that it's not only about us, right? It's about us as a whole and not us as a race. And I know this sounds cliche, but it's true. Because the only way you get to a space of being diverse and inclusive is to involve everyone and be open to other people and their opinions and their views of life compared to yours. Because that's where all your great moments come from in history, right? And all the great series and all the great work that's been done over the last 4 or 5 years, there is inclusion, there's diversity involvement, there definitely needs to be more. That's only the first link of the relay race. Right now, we need to get the next round going and hand it off and make sure that that person is getting his fair share, right? And not getting penalties called on his round to make sure that all the things that he's doing is also being accepted by the world. And what I mean by that is all the next generation filmmakers, right? So Ryan Coogler, those guys, they made a lot of noise. They bust through Regina King. They made outstanding films the way that they wanted to make them. And that's historical, because that never happened before. So that's why I say there's that first round, we ran that race, right? That first round was ran well. Now it's the second round, and we need to see who's up next. But part of that round is also who's up next way behind the camera. The executive producers, the senior VPs, the presidents, the CEOs, where all of that fits in. Because this is a very big game. It's not a small game at all. It's not simply just the filmmaker or just the actor. This thing tinkles down really, really far. This thing tinkles down into your sound department, right? People got to realize how many jobs there are to make a movie. A big budget movie, 200, 300 jobs. What's the numbers of diversity and inclusion in that space? Right? Because these people work consistently year after year after year after year, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then they move on to other spaces to tell stories, right? So the reason why it looks majority white is because those places were majority white places.
Right, so people even moving up the ranks,
Yeah,
even from the production side.
If I'm a PA, right, production assistant, and then there's a grip opening, and he's white, and she's white, and he's white, then you're going to promote white. It's just a fact, right? If you're on because I go to the point of the all-black cast, or the all-black film production, you're promoting black, 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 and that's cool too. But you got to realize that you're doing the same thing that you're saying that one party's an example of one party doing something doesn't fit for you. We have to also, as minorities, be inclusive of other groups, right? I can't have a production and have all black men and no black women, no Latin women. I need other voices, right? If you care as much about your project being the best, Black Panther broke every record there could be, right? Because a white guy decided to give a young black guy a chance, and then the black producer worked with another black producer, worked with another white producer, worked with a Jewish producer. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's why it was global, because the people around it were global, right? There were women in positions on Black Panther that never had those positions ever in life. So that's why that movie is such a passionate, not just because the director or Brian Coogler made an amazing script, that's part of it, but it's all the work that goes in behind the scenes, right? It's that part, it's the costume design, right? To know that you have an opportunity to make something of yourself in that space. And I can't remember her name, but she made the costume design. She won
an Oscar.
Yeah, she won an Oscar for it. But she was in Africa getting designs a year and a half before, because she knew she had an opportunity. But you have to be provided the opportunity. And I say this as a us thing, is we have to take it upon ourselves to open up our box a little bit to allow others that look a little different, or maybe different in size or in scope, right? Different color hair, facial features, skin tones. You need different people to give you different advice. For us, right? When we're making films, and it always starts with the story, we take the script and then we send the script out for notes, right? The script goes out to a very diverse group of people. A lot of women get it, a lot of men get it. It's like in rounds. First you send it to other writers, and then women, men, white, black, right, Latin, everything, Asian, all aspects of people. If you have it in your pool, you send it out because you want to get the feedback from all of them. Because trust me, you wouldn't care what color someone was when they showed up to buy the ticket. Yeah, you don't. I doubt if you care about that. Who's purchasing that ticket?
Yeah,
that's right. So you want to send it out, and you want to hear how it feels to a Latin consumer, right? That they'll give you information that you may not get. If I give it to my sister, it may feel a little different. She get it, right? The other one, she might say, well, it feels like there's a little bit of something missing here. And it could be a great note. And you're like, wow, I didn't think about that, because I'm not coming from that perspective. And it lines up. So you need to have a diverse pool. And then you move on to your producer's pool. And they need to be diverse. Because once it gets to the EP pool, and once it starts moving to that space, that's when we get to the distribution, right? And they don't care. The more people, the more ethnicity I can cover, the more I can sell this film. So yeah, you can get lightning in a bottle. You can have your all black cast and all black crew, or all Latin cast and all Latin crew, make a hit, and it might work everywhere, but it'll probably be niche and go specifically to, it'll be on BET, right? Or it'll land in the Latin market and it won't go global. But you built it that way. You cut your legs out from underneath yourself by not including others. Not saying that you have to have everyone involved, but you should have different people and different voices. You'd be surprised at some of the characters that you love, who's actually penning that character. You'd be very surprised.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I love what you're saying, which is an inside out look and an outside in look. And I can tell you, for me, one of my favorite films of last year is this film called Nomadland. So Nomadland was directed by, her last name is Shao. I can't remember her first name. I think it's Zhang Shao. I'm sorry? Chloe Zhao. There you go. I said Zhang Shao. Yeah, Chloe Zhao. And she's the first Asian female director to win a Best Oscar. Nomadland was amazing. Just a masterpiece. And Frances McDermott, who's the lead actress, she was a producer and she starred in the film. And I mean, she gave a tour. I mean, she was nominated, she didn't win. She gave a tour de force. Oh, she did win. There you go. Okay, and she won too. She gave a tour de force performance. And just imagine, I'm sure they partnered early on. It could have gone in many different directions. But this is an Asian woman directing a predominantly white cast. And I think that there's a lot to be said about that, you know, having those kind of opportunities to have in your crew a diversity across the spectrum, but also to be able to direct whatever you want or write whatever you want or to produce whatever you want. There's a lot.
I agree. I think that's part of the overall goal is you're being paid to do your job, right? If you're a director, if you're a producer, if you're a writer, when they call you in and you write a script, you're writing it for whatever characters are going to show up. You're writing, and hopefully you're writing your characters from a global space, right? There's different versions. There's different, the way black people are in Miami, way different than the black people in Chicago, right? Mannerisms are different. There's a connection, obviously. There's a world connection, I'll say that. I travel a lot. There's a lot of world connection with blacks, no matter where you go. But we move a little bit different, right? The Latin people in Miami move different than Latin people in California, right? So that different type of approach only helps your project sell. And you don't only have to write a Latin film. You can write a film and cast white actors, black actors, Asian actors, because the material is built for the world. It's not necessarily niche only. It's built for the world. I can remove the description and I should still be able to understand this character. I should be able to tell if the person is a certain ethnicity based off the dialect of the dialogue, or maybe not, right? And I can give it to whoever I, as a director, prefer to cast. Because that's a whole nother thing, is you give it to the director, and then the director's gonna decide whether or not that person fits his vision.
So, and that is an amazing point as well. I'm gonna take it to the end there, because you have a distribution platform.
Yeah.
Have you felt a tug or a pull to be inclusive to diverse tastes, or have you seen more diverse content come along the pipeline? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, I know this, I'm starting to sound like a broken record on we focus on the web series, so it's a little different type thing, but in this case, again, I mean, part of the thing that's made web series such a wonderful format is that there are no gatekeepers in the web series world. And, you know, so the bottlenecks that you two have talked about not having, you know, people of color in the decision-making or women in the decision-making roles, there are no decision makers as to whether you want to create your own web series, and there's no decision makers as to whether, you know, you put it on YouTube. If it's good, you know, and you're good at marketing, you know, you can build an audience. And so you know, our focus has been to take advantage of that. You know, to bring the empowering aspect of the web series. And, you know, we want to be a gatekeeper in terms of good stories, but we don't spend a lot of time worrying about whether, you know, straight white guy George thinks there's a white audience for, you know, black on both sides. You know, it doesn't matter. It's a good story, and it is going to talk to people. And you know what? If I'm wrong about it, it's not like I've taken up an hour out of a 24-hour schedule to taking that risk. And so that's just the beauty of the web series format, is that anybody who's playing some sort of gatekeeper like that in this world is doing it wrong.
So good story, strong story, good content is what really moves through.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that, as while you were saying that, is and something Grant mentioned. I mean, we're all human. We all experience very similar situations, family, school, work. Like, we all encounter very similar things, especially in America. We are our own culture, and there's a lot of things that we share. So when it comes to storylines, it shouldn't matter who plays what. We all have very similar experiences, and I just wanted to point that out, as far as with, not everyone can do that same thing together.
Yeah, well, another thing on, I guess, going off what you're saying and what you were saying, is that from a writing perspective, I tend to, when I see scripts, I hope that they generally don't have race, and that, that the characters, unless it's critical to, I mean, obviously there's stories in which race or gender or sexual orientation or gender identity or disability are obviously very critical to the character's story arc. But if it isn't, then leave it the hell out of the script and let the casting directors make that decision, because that's where bias starts. It starts in the script itself, because, if I read in a script that this character is, 47-year-old white, from Dallas, then it's going to get in my mind when casting, no matter what my intentions are as a director or producer, casting director.
Yeah, and I love that. So more the strength of the story, the strength of the character, because you could miss out on an incredible actor or actress when you're just laser focused on the specific role and the color and gender.
Can I jump in a little bit for a second? Just 1 second, I'll be quick.
No. This is your panel. I'm just the moderator, so I don't have to say anything else.
To that point, casting is a really good place where the kickoff, and again, back to that first length of the races, in casting and who you pick and who you choose. As a director, you tend to find spaces where, and Brian's, great filmmaker, and he can probably attest to this as well, is as your actors come in, or you get a casting agent and they send out the submissions, all these headshots come in, right? And you have 5 roles, 2 men, 3 women, and every single headshot has the potential to be that person, or they wouldn't be coming in. And if you go through those headshots, you have all types of races, sizes, looks. It's the person that comes in and performs the role the best. And you go, there she is. But before that step, before you walk through that door, the 200 women in this list of people all have the job. We're going to cipher out who does not want the job. Because you wouldn't be coming in if you didn't look and feel like the character that was on the page. And that stack is a very diverse stack. It just narrows down. It gets smaller and smaller. That's why you do callbacks. And then you come back and there's 3 or 4 people, and then you read again. And then they ask for adjustments. And then it's like, okay, she did this really well and she did that really well. Now you sit around and talk about who fits what best, right? But again, my point is, as you build your web series, as you build your stories, just keep an open mind to inclusion, right? The diversity of what if this person was this. I just co-wrote a pilot, and someone told us that exact note, right? What if that was a woman?
Yeah.
And it shifted everything, right? It completely shifted everything. That note alone came from a woman, and it was spot on, right? Me and my co-writer, it's more of a male perspective, so we made another male, right?
Yeah, that's great.
So it's that inclusion that's important as you're building and telling these stories. And I don't want to. My last thing is that I don't want to detract from what you guys are doing. Right? You're telling the stories that you need to tell. All I'm saying is just keep an openness to having other people involved, because I think that'll overall it'll always benefit you. Right? You don't have to have the cliche black friend or the cliche Asian guy at the desk. You can just give them a role and make them a friend, right? No matter what race you are, if you befriend someone from another race, you guys have a very distinct relationship. And people around the world have that same relationship. And that's what puts people in seats. That's what makes people turn their TVs on, because you want to see yourself and others like you in on screen. You want to see relationships that relate to you. We talk about Startup.
I was going to bring that up to you.
How it's a Miami-based series. It's such an amazing series. The structure, the writing, the filmmaking, the directing.
A very diverse series.
Everything,
Asian,
yes.
Cuban,
So diverse.
white,
Yes.
and a whole bunch of just everything.
Yeah, it's a melting pot, and it translates across everywhere. I'm from Chicago, but it shows me Miami. I get each and every character, not about race, but just where they're from. It tells me exactly what that feels like to go over to Little Haiti, right? It tells me exactly what they captured the world exclusively, and every voice they all have their own voices, and they all work together. So it's things like that when you start broadening your scope, right? To just start, again, from the earlier panel, we all have to crawl before we walk. So you'll start with your stories about you and your friend, or you and the relationship, or whatever it is, and hopefully after 3-4 of those, you start to build out different types of stories. And now it's you, your friend, and a divorce, right? The stories evolve, and as those stories evolve, it becomes more diverse, because that's what the bigger the world, the more diverse the cast and crew should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that gives more opportunities as well,
Yes.
both audience and opportunities to the talent. The best talent should rise to the top. Okay, so Brian, finally we have you on a panel. But you see this from a lot of different angles, because you have a festival, you're an actor, and you're a filmmaker and producer. So can you talk about, and I see 1, 2, 3 posters there.
Diverse,
yeah.
by the way.
Now the 3 posters are all a black man as the lead, which is Brian.
Not only a black man.
Narcissist much?
Hey, I would do the same thing. I produce films and direct. They're not all of me, but anyway. But you do have diversity within your cast. But can you talk about what you're looking for when you're casting, and then also as you're getting the entries? So the entries from the Web Fest. Do you see any standouts in terms of this whole thing of inclusion? Do you see more diverse projects coming through? Do you see less diverse projects coming through? I know it's a long question, but try to remember it all.
It's an excellent question. So first of all 4 of those movie posters are my movies. Just because,
they are.
Yeah, because
No way.
We noticed.
but nobody was buying banners, so what I could do?
Yeah, you pay less.
I did,
Right.
yes. So the movie El Sueño was actually the first feature film that I did, and it is about 2 Mexican immigrants, and I know this is going to shock you guys, but I'm not Mexican.
You could be, though.
Yeah, I could be. You never know.
Your Spanish is really good.
Thank you.
It is. It's better than mine.
But I saw something. I mean, when I first got into filmmaking and I was making shorts, part of the reason I got into it was because the barriers to entry for a black man just seemed insurmountable. And so I felt like my only entry point was going to be making my own stuff. So I wrote the script. Well, I wrote what I thought was a script, and then I found somebody who knew how to write a script, and they were like, "That ain't no script." And so, I just kind of started the process and stumbled along the way, and got very lucky because people who actually did know what they were doing attached themselves to me because we just connected on that spiritual level. You know what I mean? So I had a cast and crew where the lines were blurred between cast and crew, and they all had different backgrounds. I guess it was a combination of I got lucky, and my background is also very diverse. I'm fluent in Spanish. I had a white stepfather. It's just so many things. I've lived overseas, so my perspective on diversity is kind of unique. So when this particular opportunity came to me, I thought about it and I said, well, for one, it wasn't like I was trying to create diversity, but I wanted to create a different way of seeing a particular phenomenon, which is immigration reform. So I thought to myself, well, I would love for people to see this more as a human situation than as a political situation. Mm-hmm. And when you see yourself in someone that is not like you, I think that is the ultimate sort of human connection, and I think we are our most human when we see ourselves in people that are not like us. So my filmmaking career has always been deeply rooted in a sense of diversity and the need for diversity just because of that. So even the films that you see, once I got hooked up with Maverick, so El Sueño was before Maverick. And so Maverick, I had my web series, The Cell, and my web series is very diverse. As a matter of fact, one of the actors from that web series is here in the audience, so I'm going to put him on the spot right now, have him stand up. Bob, would you stand up, please?
Bobby!
Yeah, that's an action sci-fi web series, plug. So in any case, it was a web series. Maverick picked it up, and they gave me some specs as to what they needed it to be in order for it to be a feature film. So I made that into a feature film. But then after those two projects, all of a sudden, now I'm in Maverick's world. So Maverick is a distribution company, and they have very specific parameters on what they want to see. One of them being it has to be African-American lead characters. So that was great, except that now I have my own signature, and my signature is diversity, meaning white, Hispanic, Asian, you name it. I need that in order to write my stories because that's the way I see the world in multiple colors. So all of these films, they're pretty much, they're very diverse. You would think that they're just black movies by the cover, but you're going to see Hispanic people, you're going to see white people, you're going to see, and so anecdotally, I'm going to tell you a little, the last time we were on set, I have a Thanksgiving movie that's coming out in October. And the last time we were on set, we did a scene.
He's the hardest working man in showbiz.
Y'all laughing already. I ain't telling a joke. So we did this scene, and it was in the sticks. I mean, back in the back.
We almost died.
Okay. Yeah, the backwoods. Can I tell a story? And so, so it's an Airbnb, And all my actors, the actors for this particular set of scenes are all black, all different kinds of black, and they're all coming to this place. And the owner of the Airbnb has another house in another area. Let me remind you, we are in the sticks. They don't get a lot of black folks in this particular part of town. Can't even call it town. But, so, long story short, they're going to the wrong place. Then these people, you know, God bless them. They just, you know, they're just out of their element. People are knocking on their doors saying, "Hey, we're here for a film shoot." And they're like, "Do you see any cameras around here?" And so that is a direct quote, by the way. Okay. And the guy who said that was the owner of the Airbnb. And then I lost the key to the Airbnb. And I was like, I don't want to ask this. I don't want to. First of all, I'm like now the fifth person who's going to knock on this door.
Fifth black
if the
person.
shotgun yes. So the shotgun didn't come out yet, but I'm just like, it's gonna. And then he's going to be mad at me on top of it because I lost the. So it just so happens that my actor, Bob Thompson, is also a realtor, and he got there to set. He was there before me. And I told him I'd lost the key, and he went and go talk to the guy, and you know, the guy, one level or another, they just kind of understood each other. And I say all of that to say, you know, you don't
Have a diverse cast. Have Bob on your cast.
Is this the house you blew up? Huh? Is this the house you blew up?
No, I didn't blow this one up. No, that's a different story. Yeah, so you know, he worked it out. It's just it was good to have a white guy on the cast that day.
Yes, Bob.
Yeah. So there's two things that look at perspective. Okay, so I have another job, which is I teach. So I always tell my students to go outside of your comfort zone. Miami is a perfect place because you can go to so many different places and get diversity automatically. You can go to, I mean, you mentioned startup, but you know, you can go to Little Haiti as long as it lasts because it's becoming gentrified now. But you can go to Little Haiti and you can really get a true Haitian experience. You can go to Little Havana and you get a real Hispanic experience. You know, you can go to many different areas and get these true experiences. And I recommend to my students, hey, go there, go here, go there. We talk about in writing authentic and true voices. You know, if you are a writer, the way to get authentic and true voices is to have that experience in these areas, to have experienced with these people. And so I always recommend, and this is kind of like all around diversity, and then I'm going to open it up for questions, but there is a note, you know. 3 years ago, the film Parasite won Best Oscar.
I love that film.
Yeah, everybody loves that. I see a big shout out for one of my favorite directors. I've seen all of his movies, even the Korean ones. And, you know, it's the first predominantly, well, it's all Asian language to win Best Picture. So there still is a lot to accomplish, but when you see something like that, it does beg the question, is it the gatekeepers that are stopping this from happening or that have stopped this from happening? There seems to be a demand. And I would like to pose this question to my panel, but I need to open it up for questions first, and hopefully we get back to this. Or is it time to flood the market with diverse stories? And that's what the WebFest gives the ability to do, is to put out your own diverse stories. It looks like Nina has a statement on what I'm saying.
Sorry, it's like coming out. No, I got to be honest, speaking for myself, because I'm all about diversity and inclusion, but it's the execution part of it that I have struggled with and accepting. some of it kind of being forced into the market. For instance, Bridgerton. I love that show. Loved it. But a part of me was like, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to put black, like, it's like it comes off inauthentic. Like they're forcing the diversity in there. So it's like, I mean, I kind of pose that question to everybody. Like, you know, I myself even struggle with, you know, stereotyping or I'm used to like, okay, this is a time period piece. I know black people were not doing this stuff. I know there was no black duke in freaking, you know, wherever they were at. Like, this is fiction. This is sci-fi to me. That's how I looked at it. But it was a great, and the guy was fine as hell. So I was definitely watching
He's
it.
not coming back.
But you know what?
I know.
Z
Don't remind me. Okay, so I don't even know if I'm going to watch it now.
Gen
but anyway.
Z doesn't have that going on in their heads, though, I've noticed.
Who?
The late teens, early 20s group.
Yeah.
They don't have that sort of internal filter going, you know, why are there black people?
Right, but
you know,
and that comes from my generation. So I have to catch myself and be like, okay, so now I actually start appreciating it. And same thing even with women, like in action movies. I'm like, really? They had to put a girl to do it? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm all for, you know, feminists and I want women to have strong heroine roles, but sometimes it's like, you know, so like I'm just saying, like I'm being honest, and I know people, the audience sees the same thing. They're like, okay, this would not happen, or this person would not be playing this role. So I really don't know how to like ask that question or propose that. Like, how do you get through that paradox of, okay, accepting it and saying, okay, this isn't just being forced onto us, versus like it organically just happening and everything just like.
But that's why, you know, from the jump, from the top, I talked about, you know, let's just say the makeup of America. We could talk about the globe, but that's a whole nother story. But the makeup of America being, you know, 12, 13% black, 17% Hispanic. You know, there's Asians, there's Native Americans, and oftentimes shows either have a check mark, oh, there's the minority, and then he dies halfway through, or she dies halfway through the thing, you know, or you know, it's an all black cast, or an all white cast, or an all Asian cast, or, you know. So, but I do have to get to questions because
let me just get one
okay.
in there.
Let me take his mic.
Just to more Nina's point, I think sometimes you got to take the good with the bad, right? I agree. I understand. Sometimes you go, that's where you found the place to add it, but you have to notion the try.
Right, exactly.
Right? You have to go, okay, at least they're trying.
Right.
But it's your job to make it more authentic. Where it goes back to who's in the room, right? If it's 2 black guys and 3 white guys, and they go, let's just make her an Asian girl. People are going to watch it and go, feels like that. They're like, Asian girl? Really? That's why it feels like that, because you're just adding it just to add it. So I'm not telling, like, don't go home and take your stories and start adding in black people and white people. Don't do that, right? Because that's what it comes off and it feels exactly like that. Be authentic. Because when it's authentic, it works. So that was it. I'm done.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was profound. Okay, so we are going to open it up for questions.
Yeah,
We're not going to open it up for questions.
Yeah, no, we are going to open it up for questions. Before we open it up for questions, though, I want to introduce you guys to another one of my actors. Her name is Diajesma Orozco. She is the one that's on that poster right there. Please welcome her.
Hey, where you at? Stand up.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
All right.
I thought she was looking for her.
Diversity.
I looked backwards.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to open it up for questions now.
Yeah, right in the front.
All right, 5 James.
Hello, how you doing? Ian again, MATV. So I just have a comment, not necessarily a question, because as a agent, as a casting director myself, I deal with diversity in many ways that maybe a lot of people here have never even have dealt with. As far as, you know, I've had to deal with those calls that say, hey, don't send me pictures of black people. You know, they're not for movies, they're for videos. And I've been devastated by certain phone calls that I have to deal with. Talent is not supposed to hear that. You know what I mean? But I have to deal with that all the time about certain things. So even though we want to be diverse, you know, yes, you know, what we see on TV about certain people being, you know, racist, you know, you may not see it directly, but yes, it is out there, you know. So that's all I'm saying. As a comment, yes, it's out there. We know that it's out there, but, you know, let's work with each other and try to overcome it the best we can, because it is still alive. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. You know, we should have had you on the panel too. But, you know, there's a lot to be said about that. And that's what the statement that I was making in terms of, is it the gatekeepers that are holding this back? I started in front of the camera, more in modeling and less in acting. And then I went into acting in agencies like Ford and Boss and Wilhelmina and stuff like that. And amongst us, the blacks within the industry, we made a pact that, you know, our counterparts would go on, I don't know, their whole schedule be filled up. Oh, I couldn't even go to this one. And we'd have like one casting or audition. We'd be like, oh man. So we would crash a lot of these because we knew on the other side what they were asking for, you know? Don't send us this, don't send us that. And I've gotten a lot of jobs just crashing a lot of these auditions and a lot of the castings. And that's, you know, it feels bad to hear that, but it's real. So it's good that you put that out there. But there is something else. I'm a big believer in, you know, creating stories and moving up. And that's how it changes, though, you know, because producers then become executives, become studio heads. And, you know, we hear a lot about Shonda Rhimes and Tyler Perry and, you know, these kinds of people, Oprah Winfrey, but there really aren't a lot of them, you know, and we definitely need more. And all of you are the ones that, you know, can help to change that. So question right there.
Yes, thank you. You talk about authenticity and you talk about diversity, and two things that are like really top topic in the world right now. I notice with the younger generation that it's less of an issue because, you know, I see my children, they don't even notice the different color or shape. But in the movie industry, one thing that I really find odd is that, let's say I'm Italian, obviously, and
it's not obvious. I don't
my
know.
Accent. No,
I would know.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. Most people tell me I have a strong Italian accent. But I notice in movies, you know, sometimes there are parts for Italian. And Italian is not just the language. Italian is body language. Italian is the way we look at people, the way we react to certain things. Yet, I see an Italian part in a movie, and it's played by third generation Italian, maybe the grandparents were, and it's like, it only has the Italian name, has nothing to do, so it's completely missing authenticity. And I am wondering, I mean, is there a lack of actors that are originally, because for me it's Italian, but can be Sweden, can be Switzerland, can be, you know, Portugal, you know, we all speak and move differently. And I was wondering if, like, is that because there is a lack, or because there is, like, it's more complicated to actually hire someone, an actor, that is from the country originally? What is that is preventing the authenticity of what a foreigner actor can bring to the scene?
That's a casting question, Grant.
Yeah. That's a great question. It's sort of, and it's weird because that question is being asked at a lot of different levels, right? You have Africans who are going, wait a minute, why are you hiring an American to play African? Now you got African Americans going, why are you hiring Africans to play African American, right? You're asking the same exact question as far as for Italians is they're going third generation versus first generation, right? Or someone who's authentic from the space. The problem becomes the voice in the room creating, right, someone of Italian culture, right? Again, if we're writing a movie and I put in an Italian guy in my movie, when I do the casting, he comes in, if I hear a little accent, I'm like, okay, great, because I haven't seen enough material that's relatable to me from an Italian perspective. So that's the diversity inclusion. You're going to go and you're going to make a movie and it's going to have Italian men and Italian women, and that's great. Someone on crew, someone in your writing group, someone who you sent the script to, right, should be of another culture, because they'll give you something different as far as that character. And if you can add that to it, then that makes the casting person open up more. Okay, so this guy he's a little different. He's not the typical Italian. He feels a little different because you found a way to make him different. So your job is to make him stand out more. You know what I mean? That's just a big portion, because there's a responsibility to this. And that's the biggest thing I'm really trying to drive through is we have a responsibility. Don't let the moment pass, right? It goes back to your point earlier, Kevin, that his friend had saw this so many times before. It's because the moment comes and then it goes. Because we, all of us at every level, at the smaller levels, don't do enough to knock on the door, right? Not do enough to get to that door while it's still cracked open. And that starts by going in and just getting a different perspective of that voice in the writing. And then when you do your casting, really take time to do the casting. Don't always go for friends. Don't always go to people that you know. Put the work in. Cast. See 200-300 people for a 5-minute short, right? Let that person jump off the page to you, because if it jumps off to you and you see that person 500, you find one person that can play it, everybody in this room, if we watched it right now, they'd be like, oh, he's dope, I love him. Oh, she was amazing. I just did my first film with a all Hispanic cast, and this little kid blew me away. And I had producers walking up to me going, where'd you find him? Where'd you find him? Where'd you find him? He was given to me, right? So I'm saying he was given to me. Someone was like, no, you got to check him out. So, but it takes that. It takes the difference between, because what I'm telling him to do is different than what a Hispanic director would have told him to do. But I didn't take away his culture. I was just giving him a different way of doing it. And I mean, from action on scene, the very first scene, action, all the producers that came were like, where did you get him from? He's 9 years old. And they were like, he's a star. So it's up to us to just add those voices and make sure that they're authentic.
Yeah.
So, there's an inherent tension between the craft of acting, whose essence is you are pretending to be a character with different experiences than your own and bringing it to life, and the culture and the society that we live in which even if you feel you can pull it off, it may not be culturally the right thing for you to be doing. And I forget the name of the movie, the one that was recently, they canceled it because they were going to have, was it Scarlett Johansson was going to play the trans character? Yeah. No. That's where she was going to play the Asian character, where she played the Asian character. There was the one where, at any rate, there are issues where, first off, there are better people to play the role who have lived the experiences that we keep passing over for things, and so, for people who are making the decisions to be more cognizant of what, and the actors who have privileged positions like the Scarlett Johanssons, to recognize this. Maybe I can play this role, but should I play this role? Because I am taking an opportunity away from somebody who isn't, and that's.
There is a lot to be said about that, and I don't know the name of the movie, but
I'm sorry.
This is not the only case, but there are actors who have stepped back instead of taking that role. But it is a different day and age. Information moves so fast. So when people catch wind of these types of things, what they say, black Twitter is a bitch. But it's a lightning rod now. And that is a part of this new era, which is, people get put on Front Street very, very fast. So that's
No, but
a great point.
I really appreciate her question, though. I'm sorry, Brian. I saw you over there. No, because I feel your concern or your question, because I love Caribbean culture. I love Jamaican culture, and like I cringe when they hire people that are not of that descent, and the accents are horrendous, and I'm just like,
what you mean, man?
We call it Jafaican.
Jafaican.
It hurts my heart. I'm like, I cannot do this. So I totally understand. Like, can we just get a real Italian with a real Italian accent and not Tom Cruise trying to?
That's the people. Again, the people in the room don't know the difference, right? They don't know anyone of Jamaican descent, right? Not the 5, 10, 20 people in the room. No one knows. So that's why that diversity helps, right?
Yeah.
Had they had one Italian person in the room, or one Latin person, or one Cuban person, to go.
That's not how you say that.
I don't think. He didn't sound real to me. that changes everything. So that's the goal, is to get into that space, and it's like I said, we're in the second portion of that relay, and that's what's sort of being done now. But again, the more you do it, the more we'll do it, the more that everybody else will start to respond, because the great thing is the YouTube era, the whole, like, you can build your whole platform and just distribute your own. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of talent being found there.
Yeah.
Right? So that helps too.
Yeah. So Brian is going to come up here and choke me, like Rogue Cell choke me.
This is good.
It's been an incredible panel. I think a big takeaway is that everyone here in the room, the creators, creating indelible stories that really touch upon your background and who you are. And, you know, that, I think, ultimately, when those stories go out in the world, and then you get the next story and the next story, and you become a producer, an executive producer, and you start running these studios, or you start running your own studios. Yeah, I think that's your next step, Brian, running your own studio.
I would like that.
That's going to make the difference. So I'd like
BT Studios.
BTS.
I have one more comment here, and then we can.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So I have a comment and then a question about something that you guys talked about earlier. I mean, I think about this in a lot of ways, and one way I haven't heard you guys bring up is how much content we have now. Like even Bridgerton as an example, where it's like regurgitating old rich white people stories and then just recasting them, or remaking a movie from 1940 with a different cast. And I'm like, there are so many people out here who are unknown people, unknown quantities, don't have the financing, and can't get the financing because people who have the financing are saying, in order to get the financing, you need to have a celebrity. You need to have a known quantity. But the only way anyone gets known is that somebody decides to give a break to that person, so that entity. So when I hear them talking about casting, I'm like, yes, that's important, but you got to go back to the earlier stages of like, what are we greenlighting to create? And how are we going to include more stories that haven't been told yet from all different backgrounds? And then I wanted to say, in terms of script writing, because I've come from the school of thought of like, don't put any ethnicity on any character unless the character, their ethnicity is inherent to the story that's being told, which generally has been a good rule. But in New York, lately in my writing groups, people have been like, no, you have to put an ethnicity on every character, because if you don't put one on every character, then the default is white. Yep. Because the industry is so, you know, and it's all this cycle. And there's a great story with that movie, The Gods of Egypt.
Oh,
and I want
you
to
had
talk
to
about
say
that for a second. Because that movie was obviously like horrifically cast, but it was like what you were hearing from the money people was, well, we don't have people from Egypt that we can cast that will carry the movie. And I'm like, well, you have to fucking care. Use my language.
Say it, girl. You better speak your mind. This is a safe
go out
space.
And find that person and raise them up. That's the thing. That's the thing. But also, then I go back to us as the audience. We need to stop going, oh, I want want to see that Matthew McConaughey film. I want to see that Scarlett Johansson film. No, I want to see a film about that story, about those people that I haven't seen. I want to know, like, who are all these actors I've never seen? And see that. Like, that's the thing. It's like we all need to work all together and put our pieces out and say,
Reach.
Anyway.
Okay.
Reach.
Yeah,
I do.
that's a panel unto itself.
That is.
Yeah. But you know, I can say there's many layers there, you know, and what you said in terms of, you know, films and television shows having recognizable faces and it being monetized and this and this and that and that. I keep talking about Issa Rae, who is the face of web series now, a black woman. I mean, that's pretty awesome, you know. But it is a day and age where creation can help to change that internally. There was talk about, you know, can you attach someone to your project? Issa Rae didn't have any attachments when she came through, so that, you know, but at the top, you know, you still have a lot of these decision makers in terms of that monetary, studios and networks, which is really kind of falling differently now too, that have an old school way of thinking, but now you have another generation that's rising up that doesn't think that specific way. So that's changing. And in terms of a lot of regurgitated property, there's this thing called intellectual property, which is like a lot of these old movies and TV shows that then the studios own them and the networks own them, and they want to utilize that intellectual property, so they will regurgitate over and over because they own it. It costs more money to do original stuff, you know, and so they want to use that intellectual property over and over and over again. But there is a way without a star or without a known talent. Issa Rae, I keep saying it over and over again, but there's a lot of people who weren't, you know, Tyler Perry wasn't Tyler Perry before he was, I mean, he was always Tyler Perry. But before he was known, you know, these are lightning in a bottle, as someone said in an earlier panel, but there is a way. And that way is doing your project. You do one, the next one gets better. You do another one, the next one gets better. You do another one, the next one gets better, and on and on and on. I didn't know that Issa Rae had 4 shows that I told you I learned something every time. She had 4 shows. I mean, that's crazy, or 4 seasons of the show. That's a lot of content, you know, but each one she got better and better and better and better and better, because you can't depend on the networks and the studios to do the right thing. You just can't. Sorry. People who work for the...
Well, I know we have to end the panel soon, but I just want to make a disclaimer. This whole panel, we talked about race and ethnicity, and I think what we did not touch on today, might be another panel maybe next year, is also including LGBTQ community.
Yes,
That's
it is Pride Month.
We did not even talk about that at all, so I apologize, you know, for not, I guess, mentioning that, because that is also, they're also in that struggle together with us. So just wanted to point it out there. That's
absolutely,
a whole other
and people with disabilities too. But
that's
But it's Pride Month, so
it's Pride Month. That's right.
I'm very glad that you mentioned that.
Shame on you.
No, but you mentioned it, so you saved the day. So thank you, Brian. My panelists, esteemed panelists, if you have any closing remarks. Okay.
We've spoken enough.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, Laverne, Miami Web Fest. Thank you, everyone in the audience, my new friends. This has been another great panel.
Thank you.
Huge round of applause.